He wore power like a perfectly tailored sin and still tried to enter quietly. The brasserie's windows caught the river's last silver and let it tremble across the white tablecloths. Chairs whispered. A violin threaded something soft through the low hum of Thursday night Manhattan. Luigi Veroni didn't usually keep blind dates. Blind dates belonged to lighter lives. But Sophia had insisted, and when Sophia insisted, the unkillable parts of him remembered what mercy sounded like. He spotted her before she saw him. Claire Ross, a woman who made simplicity look like an oath. Cream blouse, hair pinned loosely as if the wind had been allowed one small victory, and eyes that held their own weather. She checked the door once, twice, like someone who had learned to count exits. He squared his shoulders and walked toward the only thing in the room that made everything else go quiet. "Claire?" he said, voice even. She lifted her head. The smile she offered was polite, careful, almost warm, until she looked at him fully. Something flickered. Not fear, not awe, recognition with a razor edge. "You don't remember me, do you?" The violin didn't stop. The river still shimmered. But inside Luigi, a wire snapped taut. He took the seat across from her because retreat would have been a confession. "We've met?" he asked, and the ask was clean, disarming, sincere. Exactly as a liar would do it. Only he wasn't lying. He would have remembered a face like Claire's and the way her voice folded around a sentence as if it could break. "Years ago," she said, and the words landed soft. "High school, not the same classes, not the same world. But one night, your path crossed mine." If this was a play at leverage, it was strange theater. He watched her fingers. No ring. A silver bracelet with a nick near the clasp. Hands that probably wrote on boards and turned pages, not hands that hid blades. He forced the smallest smile. "Then I owe you an apology. And a coffee. I've heard this place does both extremely well." A server drifted by with that New York mix of distance and care. Espresso for him, coffee for her. Silence took a chair at their table and sat down like an old friend. "Your sister said your schedule is impossible," Claire said, stirring cream she never looked at. "I almost didn't come." "Why did you?" He meant it. Her eyes lifted. Weather again. "Because sometimes the universe is stubborn. Because there are conversations that wait for years." The door opened and a pair of men stepped in wearing the uniform of forgettable danger. Navy windbreakers, clean shoes. Luigi didn't look at them. He let the glass wall do its work, catching all the motion behind her while he kept his attention exactly where it belonged. "Tell me the night," he said. He didn't know why he gave her that. Maybe because he owed the past its due. Maybe because her calm was heavier than anger. She exhaled. "It was a fundraiser on the Upper East Side. I was a scholarship kid drafted to pass trays. There was champagne I wasn't supposed to touch and laughter that didn't need an audience. You were on the steps outside, angry at the world in that specific way 17-year-old boys perfected." A shard of memory pried at him. Winter breath clouding streetlight, the smell of exhaust, someone's cologne like a threat. A girl moving quickly past trouble. "You asked if I was okay," she said. "I said I was fine. You didn't believe me. A senior had been persistent. You stepped between us like you'd been born to block doors." Her mouth tilted, a private smile at an old miracle. "Then you left before I could say thank you." He felt heat move through his chest, not pride. Something like grief for a kid who had been good for a second and didn't know what to do with it. "If that was me," he said quietly. "I'm glad I did one thing right." The men in windbreakers passed behind her. Not Carboni's style. Not cops either. Watchers. He let Marco's lessons roll through his nerves. Don't startle the deer, don't spook the room. He eased his right hand under the table where a phone slept face down. One touch, one vibration. The signal would bring Marco Santori to the curb in 2.5 minutes. Claire's gaze didn't flinch. "That night wasn't the only time our worlds touched." "Go on," he said, even as he was counting windows, angles, faces, and exits, because a life like his had always been 2 conversations at once. "A month later," she said, voice steadying around words she must have carried like a box of old letters. There was a fire in Queens, my uncle's hardware store. He kept prices kind for people who couldn't afford kind. The fire took the store, took him. And the neighborhood whispered the name Verone like a weather report. Everyone knew not to say it loud. The hum in the restaurant dimmed to a thin wire. Even the river seemed to hold its breath. He looked at her and did not look away. People whisper a lot of names when they don't have the truth. Do you have it? Her question wasn't a blade. It was a bridge with a toll. He didn't answer, because anything he said would be an engineering of trust he hadn't earned yet. Instead, he said, "I'm sorry for your loss." And meant that, too. "Sorry isn't the same as clean," she murmured. The espresso arrived like a small, dark trial. He took it black and drank it like repentance. Outside, a camera flash popped, quick, small, a gnat against glass, and the men in windbreakers peeled off down the block. He set the cup down. "Some people take pictures," he said almost lightly, "because they can't afford stories. I have a story." Claire folded her hands. "And I came tonight to learn if the man in front of me belongs in it." He should have smiled. He should have pivoted to flirtation, to safer ground where men like him said the right clever thing and kept hearts exactly where danger couldn't see them. Instead, he did the thing that felt like lunging off a building to see if he still knew how to fall. "I'm not who I was at 17, he said. "But I'm not a saint. If you came for absolution, you picked the wrong priest." "I didn't," she said. "I came for truth." He nodded once. "Truth is expensive. I don't always have the currency." "And yet you paid once," she said, and her eyes warmed a half-degree. "You stood in front of a girl nobody would have defended, and you paid attention. Sometimes that's everything." The door opened again. This time the air that entered was colder, heavy with the taste of exhaust. Luigi's phone vibrated once. Marco. He slipped a glance at the screen. 2 tails. Across the street. Photo taken. "Carbone? Unknown. Suggest exit." He looked back to her. "Claire," he said softly, "have you ever trusted your instincts so fast it scared you?" "Yes," she said, not blinking. "Good. Because I need you to trust them now. We're leaving, and we're walking like people who decided the night is better somewhere else. I'll keep 3 steps between us. If I tell you to run, you run toward the corner with the florist and the yellow awning. Don't argue." Her chin lifted. "Is this your world asking to meet me?" "It's my world telling me it already has." He stood, his hand at her back, not touching. They moved through the warm light and the soft clink in the violin as if they'd been choreographed by the same unforgiving city. Outside, New York had dressed in cold glitter. The river made a sound like teeth. Across the street, the windbreaker men paused, then drifted. He angled Claire toward the florist, counting cars. A black sedan idled half a block down, windows dark with the kind of money that paid for quiet. Marco's SUV slid from nowhere, a shadow stitching itself to the curb. The passenger door opened a breath. "Boss," Marco said, voice a clean sheet of steel. He took one look at Claire and did not flinch. "Good evening, Ms. Ross." "You know my name?" she asked, startled. "We do our homework," Marco said, not unkindly. A lens winked from the black sedan. The sedan pulled forward a yard, stopped, pulled forward again. Testing. Daring. Luigi stepped to put his body between metal and woman. "This is ridiculous," Claire whispered. "I teach sophomores." "Monsters love the soft-lit parts of a map," Luigi said. "That's where they leave their footprints." The sedan's window lowered an inch. He heard the insect rattle of a camera again. Not a gun tonight. Not with witnesses and glass and the river's indifferent eye. Carbone liked messages. He liked photographs that traveled through City Hall like rumors wearing shoes. "Get in," Luigi said to Claire, and the way he said it sounded like protection learned the hard way. She didn't argue. There are moments the body chooses who to believe before the brain finishes its vote. She slid into the seat. Marco handed her a blanket from the back, the way soldiers do when the air has teeth. Luigi didn't climb in. He held the door and looked down the block until the sedan blinked its turn signal like a dare and rolled away. He got in, shut the door, and the city became soundproof velvet. Marco eased into traffic with the patience of saints. Claire hugged the blanket, eyes on him. "Is this what a blind date is with you?" "Most of my dates are eyes wide open," he said, and she couldn't tell if it was humor or confession. "I'm sorry your night needed a bodyguard." "I'm sorry your life requires one," she said back, because she was who she was. Marco's gaze cut into the rear view. "Photo will be on Carbone's desk by midnight," he reported, "and on Ada Cole's by morning if she's in a sharing mood." "Addison Cole?" Claire repeated, the name prickling a teacher's instinct for headlines. "Why would an ADA care I had coffee with a man?" "Because some men turn coffee into leverage," Marco said. "Marco," Luigi said quietly, and the warning was old and affectionate. Claire watched the two of them, the easy gravity in their orbit, the way loyalty can look like weather that never changes. It did something to her breath she didn't authorize. "My uncle's store," she said into the soft of the car, because the past hadn't finished talking. "People said Veroni set the fire. People say a lot of things. I just want clarity." Luigi didn't look away. "If I find the truth," he said, "and it hurts me, do you still want it?" "Truth doesn't ask if we're ready," she answered. "That's not its job." For the first time that night, he smiled like a man who hadn't learned to yet. "You should never be left alone, Claire Ross." "I've been alone for years," she said, and somehow made it sound like she'd been brave. They reached the curb of a building with doormen who looked like they could read intentions at 20 feet. Marco opened Claire's door. "Third floor," he said. "Short elevator, longer choice." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I can't go into your world tonight." "Good," Luigi said. "Then I'll walk you to yours." "My world is 3 trains and a walk," she said, "and a superintendent who pretends the heat works." "I was hoping you'd let me rewrite the last part." He caught himself, redirected. "Let me at least make the train simpler. I'll keep my distance. Not because I want to." She studied him as if a test had only one right answer. "If you're trying to make me fall for you," she said lightly, "you should know I grade essays, not men. Then let me try for an A in a course I never passed." The line should have been ridiculous. Somehow it wasn't. She nodded, small. 2 stations, no further. "I don't want to owe you." "You saved me first," he said. "What?" "On the steps," he answered. "You looked me in the face and made me stop being the worst version of a boy. Sometimes that's the only rescue a person gets." The train swallowed them into a tunnel where city and fate sound the same. They stood not touching, and strangers saw what they always see. 2 people pretending not to notice gravity. At the second stop, she signaled. He didn't follow her off the car. He stayed in the doorway with one hand braced like he could hold the whole train back if he had to. "Claire," he said, low, the sound barely crossing the gap. "If someone approaches you in the next 48 hours, police, press, anyone, call this number first." He slid a card to her. No name, just digits and a sliver of black embossed with a raven's wing. "Say Raven. I'll pick up." "Is this a myth or a mode of transport?" she asked. "Both," he said. The doors chimed. The train tugged at its leash. She stepped back to the platform, the card warm in her palm. "You still don't remember me," she said. Not an accusation, just an inventory. "I remember enough to know I want to," he answered. The doors closed between them like glass between oceans. The train breathed him away. Claire stood with the raven in her hand and the old story in her chest and the future tapping the soles of her feet like a drummer outside the room. 2 blocks from her apartment, a car crawled the curb with its lights off. A camera snapped once, twice. A shadow stepped from a doorway and folded a note under her windshield wiper, precise as surgery. She read the note under a streetlight that owed more to moon than electricity. "Not your world, not your man. Choose quiet." She looked down the block, heartbeat learning a new tempo. Somewhere in the city, a boss looked at a night he couldn't control and decided control was a smaller god than love. In the morning, a copy of the photo, her face through brasserie glass, Luigi's profile turned just enough to ruin privacy, would land on Matteo Carbone's desk and a heartbeat later, slide across Ada Addison Cole's inbox like a dare. But here, with cold air on her skin and the raven burning her palm, Claire Ross folded the note, slipped it into her pocket, and climbed her stairs without breaking stride. She had learned to be invisible once. It hadn't saved her. Maybe visibility would. Above her, a siren sang the city to sleep. Across town, Marco Santori said into a phone, "We've been seen," and Luigi Verone, staring at a river that never changed, answered, "Good. Then let them watch." What exactly did the city expect to see when a woman with a teacher's heart walked into a war she didn't start, and a man with a criminal's past decided he'd rather be known than feared? And who, out there in the dark, had decided to write their ending for them? Claire didn't sleep. The city slouched against her windows, restless as always, but tonight its noise felt personal. Like Manhattan itself, leaned close to ask what she thought she was doing, entangling her heart with a man who lived in headlines and whispered threats. She sat on the edge of her bed, shoes still on, coat still draped across her shoulders, staring at the folded note from her windshield as if it might unwrite itself. Not your world, not your man. Choose quiet. Quiet had been her survival. Quiet had been the weapon of the powerless, but quiet had cost her too much already. And tonight a Mafia boss had crossed a room because her name was on his schedule, then stepped between her and danger without needing a reason. And that was louder than any warning. Her phone buzzed once. A text from Jenna Walsh, her best friend since freshman year at NYU. "You still alive? If he tries to murder you, call me first. I'll haunt him." Claire smiled despite the shake under her ribs. "I'm okay." She typed, "He's not what I expected." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Girl, don't start. Men who can kill you with a frown are not boyfriend material." Claire shut off her screen. If only Jenna knew how complicated the past could be. She pulled her curtains closed, but not before she saw a black car slow at the corner, watching, measuring. The darkness outside had a pulse. And for the first time in years, Claire didn't feel alone, because a man she barely knew had said, "If someone approaches you, call me first." She placed the raven-embossed card on her nightstand like a promise she wasn't ready to use. But she didn't throw it away. She wasn't that stupid, and she wasn't invisible anymore. Luigi Verone didn't sleep either. His penthouse had windows tall enough to frame the river like an apology. The skyline glowed, hard, sharp, hungry. Exactly the kind of hunger that built empires and buried regrets. Marco Santori leaned against the marble counter of the open kitchen, sleeves rolled up, tie gone. "Boss, this isn't like you. Blind date with a civilian." Luigi poured 2 fingers of scotch he didn't actually want. "Sophia set it up." "Sophia also says we should go to therapy," Marco grumbled. "We ignore half of what she says." Luigi didn't react. He stood perfectly still, staring at the reflection in the glass, a man who had outgrown mistakes but kept making new ones. "You're thinking about the fire," Marco said quietly. Luigi closed his eyes. "She lost family that night, and she thinks we did it." Marco pushed off the counter. "Carbone's fingerprints are all over that neighborhood if you know where to look. He wanted territory. He always wants territory. And rumors are easier than truth," Luigi murmured. He remembered the girl on the steps, fear in her posture, pride in her chin. He had forgotten her face, but not the instinct to protect her. Some instincts refused to die. "What's your read on her?" Marco asked. "She didn't flinch," Luigi said, "even when she should have. She also didn't run. That," Luigi said, "is what scares me the most." Marco's phone chirped. He glanced at the screen. "Carbone's men tailed you to the station. We intercepted before they saw where she lives." "But they're curious now." Luigi set the glass down untouched. "Of course they are. You know what comes next?" "Yes." Luigi nodded once. "We keep her alive." Marco looked at him, long and unblinking. "And what do we do with you?" Luigi didn't answer. He stared at the city that asked men like him to choose violence to stay breathing. Tonight had been supposed to be simple. It never was. The next morning came too bright. Claire arrived at Westbridge High School before the first bell, clutching a travel mug and wearing exhaustion disguised as mascara. The hallways smelled like floor wax and whispered drama. Teenagers, loud, alive, unbroken, stormed through the doors in clusters. "Ms. Ross!" A girl with lavender braids skidded to a stop. "I finished the extra credit." "Great job, Talia," Claire managed. "Put it on my desk." She tried to focus. Grades, lesson plans, Hemingway's tragic masculinity. But her mind kept replaying the moment Luigi stepped between her and danger, as if the world had granted her a shield with a jawline. At second period, Principal Dalton tapped on her door. "Sorry to interrupt. There's someone who wants to speak with you." Claire's stomach flipped. Ada Addison Cole walked in like a lawsuit wearing red lipstick. Tall, striking, a storm in heels. She flashed a badge at the students as though they should applaud. "Ms. Ross," she said. Claire stepped into the hallway. "What's this about?" Cole lowered her voice. "Last night you were seen in the company of Luigi Verone." Claire swallowed. "He walked me to the train. That's not a crime. In his world, everything becomes evidence." Claire straightened. "What do you want?" Cole's smile was thinner than truth. "Your cooperation. When someone like you spends time with someone like him, sometimes they see things, hear things." "You think I'm a witness," Claire said. "To what?" "A criminal empire collapsing," Cole replied. "And when it collapses, people get buried in the rubble." Claire bristled. "I teach Shakespeare. I don't spy on crime families." "You could help put away a man responsible for dozens of ruined lives." "And if he isn't?" Claire shot back before she could stop herself. Cole's eyes flashed. "Don't let charm blind you. Monsters don't come with warning labels." Cole handed her a card. "Call me before he does something you'll regret knowing about." Claire returned to class shaking, not from fear, but from anger at someone deciding her story before she told it. Luigi stood in the back pew of St. Anthony's Church in Little Italy, hands clasped behind him, as Father Rinaldi lit a candle for souls who couldn't light their own. "You've come late," the priest said without looking up. "Too late for confession, right on time for consequence." Luigi allowed himself a mirthless breath. "I need to know the truth about the fire in Queens." Rinaldi finally turned. His eyes held decades of secrets and disappointments. "Truth? Ah, that word again. Men in your family bleed for it only when it serves them." "Someone I care about lost family that night," Luigi said. "If we bear that sin, I want to know." "And if you do not bear it?" Rinaldi asked. "What then?" "Then someone else does," Luigi said, "and I will not let her keep grieving the wrong devil." Rinaldi lingered in silence. "Careful, Luigi. Caring is how men like you die." Luigi's phone buzzed. Marco again. Cole spoke to her. "Move fast." The candle flames trembled in a gust of unseen air. Things were changing. After school, Claire stepped into the parking lot and froze. Her tires, both on the driver's side, slashed. She scanned the street. The world watched back. A plain white card was tucked under her wiper blade. Only one word typed in small black letters. Raven. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. She didn't want to need him, but she also didn't want to die because she was too proud to dial 10 digits. The call rang once. "Claire," his voice, already moving, already coming. "My tires," she whispered. "Someone." "I'm 3 minutes out," he said. "Stay on the sidewalk. Don't go home. Marco is closest. He'll see you first." Her pulse slowed, not because she wasn't scared, but because hearing him turned fear into strategy. A dark SUV spun around the corner seconds later. Marco hopped out, scanning everything. "In, now." Claire slid into the back seat. Luigi was there, suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up like he'd run through a checkpoint to get to her. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice rough with too much imagining. "I'm fine," she lied. "No," he said quietly. "You're brave. That's different." Their eyes locked. The SUV pulled away. Claire exhaled shakily. I don't understand any of this. You will, Luigi promised. I'll give you every answer you ask for, just not while someone tries to make you disappear. She turned toward him. Why do you care what happens to me? He looked at her like the truth itself was dangerous to say aloud. Because, he said, you make me want to be a man worth remembering. Her lungs misfired. Too intimate. Too soon. Too real. Marco cleared his throat. Boss? We've got a tail. Of course they did. Luigi leaned forward. Lose them. Marco grinned like someone who collected trouble for fun. With pleasure. They shot into traffic, cutting left, then right, racing under the bridge where Sun died in the steel ribs of the city. The tail car tried to follow, and then vanished. Marco smirked. Matteo needs better drivers. Claire clutched the seat. How long until this stops? When the man who wrote that note learns you're not negotiable, Luigi said. Silence throbbed. Finally, Claire whispered, You're risking so much, for someone you don't even remember. Luigi reached out, slow, giving her every chance to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his knuckles grazing her cheek. I don't remember the face, he said, but I remember what it felt like to want to protect you. It was too much, and not enough. The SUV slowed. Marco looked back. Boss, we're here. Claire blinked out of the moment and realized they were parked outside a high-rise with mirrored glass doors and a doorman who already recognized who was worth respecting. This isn't my home, she said. No, Luigi said. It's where you'll be safer until I handle what's coming. She shook her head. I can't hide in your world. You're not hiding, he said. You're surviving. I've been surviving my whole life, she said. I'm tired. Then let me fight, he replied. You don't have to do everything alone anymore. She stared up at him. This man she shouldn't trust, and felt her heart shatter open anyway. What if you're the one who hurts me? She asked. I'll spend my life proving I'm not, Luigi answered. Marco opened her door. Ms. Ross, please. Claire stepped out. Not because she was convinced, but because she didn't want to walk home looking over her shoulder, waiting for a second slash. Inside the building entrance, she paused and looked back at Luigi. He looked like a promise she shouldn't believe. He looked like danger she already did. Tomorrow, she said. Meet me here. If you're serious, tell me everything. Luigi nodded. Respectful, determined. You have my word, he said. No more shadows. But as the elevator doors slid shut, she heard Marco mutter, Boss, we have a bigger problem. And Luigi's voice, low and dark. Who? Marco handed him a tablet. A news alert glowed. Photo leaked. English teacher seen with feared Veroni boss. Sources claim she may be cooperating with authorities. Claire's face on the screen. His, too. The world deciding their roles before they even learned their lines. Luigi closed his eyes once. War had officially begun. If the world had already written their downfall, what would Luigi Veroni burn to rewrite it? And how long until Claire realized the truth she wanted might cost them both their lives? By morning, the photo was everywhere it didn't belong. On gossip blogs and neighborhood group chats, in a grim little carousel on the local news page, zoomed and cropped and captioned by strangers who mistook their certainty for truth. Claire kept her phone face down on her desk and taught first period like the room wasn't shivering with it. Her students watched her like she might step out of her own life and leave her skin behind. At the bell, Principal Dalton hovered in the doorway with a sympathetic face he'd practiced in mirrors. Ms. Ross, can I steal a minute? She followed him to his office, past the framed certificates that swore institutions always did the right thing. He closed the door and folded his hands. There's chatter. I know. A district rep called. They're concerned about optics. He winced as if the word hurt his tongue. I suggested we handle this with discretion. Perhaps take the rest of the day, a few days. Am I suspended? Claire asked evenly. No, this is voluntary. He waited. But I need you to say yes. She nodded because fighting him wasn't the same as fighting for her life. I'll prepare subplans. He opened a drawer and slid a folder across the desk. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You're an excellent teacher. Being excellent has never been the same as being safe, she said softly, then stood before he could apologize for a world that wasn't going to. Out in the hall, a dozen phones were secreted into hoodies and sleeves. Jenna stepped from the counseling office like a small hurricane with lipstick. Claire. Please don't, Claire said. I'm not scolding, I'm escorting. Jenna locked her arm through Claire's. You don't get to walk alone when the city thinks you're an episode. I'm okay. Of course you are, you always are. That's the problem. Jenna stopped, searched her face. Is he? Complicated, Claire said. Jenna sighed. So are black holes. Text me later. You'll hear from me every hour like an invasive vine, Jenna promised. If he so much as breathes wrong, I will put his head on a bulletin board with sticky notes. Claire laughed, a thin sound that broke like light through blinds. Then she left before the hallway could start applauding or hissing. Outside, the air had teeth. She wrapped her coat tighter and scanned the block. No slashed tires today. No note that called her a trespasser. Only a city pretending to be neutral as it watched. Her phone vibrated once. No name, just a number she now knew by the way her pulse changed. Claire. Luigi. Dalton benched you, he said. Not a question. Voluntarily, she said. The district is allergic to scandal. I can sue them into a coma. Don't, she exhaled. I don't want your war touching my classroom. There was a pause at the other end, as if he sorted his words before he let them fall. Let me keep you somewhere no one can reach. One day. Then you can decide to hate me from a safer distance. How persuasive, she said dry. I can cook, he added. She looked up at the gray sky as if it could answer for her. Your penthouse is not neutral ground. I didn't offer my penthouse, he said. I offered a place with locks I trust. And windows? She asked. And windows, he said. You can hate men like me less when there's daylight. She closed her eyes. An afternoon. And you tell me something real. Not just the parts you've polished for public consumption. Agreed. His voice softened. Send me a corner. I'll be there. She texted him the cross streets, then walked, hands in pockets, as if she hadn't agreed to step onto a ledge. The safe apartment was 3 floors up over a florist where the windows always looked like spring. Inside, everything was clean lines and soft edges, oak floors, white walls, an L-shaped couch that could hide a small army of exhaustion. Cameras nested discreetly in corners like well-behaved birds. Marco opened the door before she knocked. Ms. Ross. He tilted his head toward a basket on the entry table. Toss your phone. What? Only while you're here, he said. We scrub, we shield. You step out, you get it back with a hug. She hesitated. Then she dropped her phone into the basket. Trust wasn't a switch. It was a rope bridge that whined the first time you stepped on it. Luigi stood in the kitchen with his sleeves rolled up, chopping garlic like it had personally offended him. A pan hissed. Olive oil breathed perfume into the air. You can cook? She said, surprised into a smile. I grew up watching women do everything, he said. It made me angry for them and better with my hands. She moved to the counter, watching him pivot in that tight gravity men have when they've survived rooms they couldn't control. He tossed tomatoes and basil into the pan, added pasta with a splash of the water like a spell. Sauce is a conversation, he said. Between? What the ingredients think they are and what they could be. She found herself laughing again. You sound like you've given a TED talk about marinara. He slid a plate toward her. Eat before you faint from principle. She took a bite and closed her eyes, shocked by joy. When she looked up, he was watching her the way people watch fireworks. Half delighted, half worried something will catch fire. After, he poured coffee so black it could have been night. She wrapped both hands around the mug and leaned against the counter. Truth, she said. You promised. He nodded, braced his palms on the quartz. I'm trying to take the Verone name out of the business that made it a weapon. Marco thinks I'm naive. Sophia thinks I'm late. And Carbone thinks I'm dangerous because I'm bored of blood. She studied him. Why me? You walked through a room like you'd done it before, he said simply. And you spoke to me like you weren't auditioning. I don't remember the face from those steps, but I remember how it felt to choose to stand in front of you once. My body remembered before my mind did. Her throat tightened. Do you know how unfair it is that you say things like that while you look like that? He grinned, quick, involuntary, boyish enough to be a problem. I can turn around and face the wall. I didn't say stop, she murmured. A knock tapped at the door, soft but coded. 3, pause, 2. Marco checked the screen and opened. Father Rinaldi stepped in with the city folded into his coat. He looked at Claire and something like recognition, no, responsibility, moved through his eyes. Father, Luigi said, thank you for coming. I serve a parish, Rinaldi said. I also serve the mercy of not letting fools ruin what good the Lord has eked out of their lives. He took a chair at the small table, hands folded. Claire sat opposite. Luigi poured him coffee without asking if he wanted it. That told her enough. You lost family in a fire, Rinaldi said to Claire. Not a question. Yes. You were told a surname as if it were a crime in itself. Yes. Rinaldi's gaze drifted to Luigi, then back to her. Your story wasn't told right. She felt the words land one by one, heavy and precise. Are you saying Veroni didn't do it? I am saying rumor is a lazy messenger, Rinaldi replied. Men love an easy villain because easy villains let them stay lazy. Tears burned the corners of her eyes, the kind that arrive when you realize you've been starving for water you didn't know existed. She blinked them back because crying in front of dangerous men broke rules she hadn't written but had learned by heart. Who? She asked. Rinaldi spread his hands. Names matter to law. Patterns matter to priests. That neighborhood belonged to men who wanted to collect grief the way others collect rent. When grief piles high enough, it changes how people vote, where they shop, who they trust. The man who benefited most from that fire was not sitting at this table. Carbone, Luigi said quietly. Rinaldi didn't confirm. He didn't have to. Claire exhaled like she'd been underwater. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt tired, all those years believing one story because it was the only one offered. Why didn't anyone say this before? She whispered. Fear buys silence at wholesale, Rinaldi said, finishing his coffee. And your uncle, God rest him, wouldn't have wanted his niece to mouth other men's wars just to make sense of pain. He stood, coat whispering. At the door he paused. Luigi. Yes, Father. Truth is not a weapon you get to use only when it spares you. He looked at Claire again. Be careful. People will try to hand you versions of yourself that fit their needs better than your own. When he left, the apartment felt newly oxygenated. Claire stared at the table, at the tiny circle of coffee the priest's cup had left. If it wasn't you, she said to Luigi, why didn't you ever say that out loud? Because I didn't know for certain, he answered. And a denial without proof is a kind of lie. She searched his face for arrogance and found only a complicated kind of shame. You've been carrying a sin that wasn't yours. My family has real sins, he said. I can't tell you the name of every man who paid for them. I can tell you I'm done adding to the list. She nodded. Then help me find proof. He raised an eyebrow. You want to walk toward a fire to learn who lit it. I want to stop letting it write me, she said. Besides, I teach teenagers. Nothing scares me. Teenagers apologize, he said. Carbone doesn't. Marco reappeared, moving like a shadow that preferred honesty to surprise. Boss, Ada Cole is outside, not at the door. Across the street in a sedan with a man who thinks he disappears when he looks down. Claire stood. She really wants a piece of me. She wants a head for her wall, Marco said. Yours is pretty and symbolic. Enough, Luigi snapped softly. He looked at Claire. You can walk out and talk to her if you want. This is not a cage. What would you do? Claire asked. I would make her wait, he said. Power is who sets the appointment. Claire thought about her students, about small acts of defiance that teach you how to keep your soul. Then we let her stare at a door. They didn't move. 3 minutes, 5, 10. The sedan finally pulled away with bureaucratic irritation. "You're very bad at being invisible," Marco told Claire, almost fond. "I was good at it once," she said. "It didn't save me." Luigi's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and frowned. Sophia. He stepped into the bedroom to take it. Claire could still hear the shape of his voice through the wall, dark vowels, the soft scrape of worry. He returned with a face composed enough to fool a judge and sat on the arm of the couch instead of beside her, as if distance could stop gravity from doing its favorite trick. "Sophia wants me to leave town for a week," he said. "Let heat pass." "And will you?" "I don't leave New York while men like Carbone write narratives," he said. "Also, I don't leave you." She startled. "We met yesterday." "Yesterday was enough," he said simply. She should have asked for time. She should have insisted on sense. Instead, she said, "Show me why men follow you." He blinked. "You want a demonstration?" "I want to know if the empire is made of fear or faith," she said. "Those aren't the same." He studied her for a heartbeat, then smiled a little, rueful. "Put on your coat, Claire Ross. We're going for a walk." They kept to streets with witnesses, a produce market that smelled like summer in cans, a barber shop with Saturday jazz drifting out on a weekday, a deli whose owner looked like he'd survived 4 economies and 3 heartbreaks. Inside the deli, a thin man with a mustache like a smudge rang up a line of construction workers with hands like geography. When he saw Luigi, he stiffened, then relaxed, relief moving through him like heat. "Mr. Verone," he said, "I have it." "You have nothing," Luigi said, scanning the shelves. "You have salami and gossip. I like the first one." The man flushed. "The collectors came yesterday." "Matteo's?" Luigi asked. The man nodded. "How much do you owe?" 7,000, he whispered. "They added late fees." Luigi looked at the counter display of lollipops in a chipped glass jar. "How much for one of these?" 50 cents. Luigi pulled a thick envelope from his coat and set it on the counter like a paper brick. "I'm buying 14,000 lollipops in advance, for the neighborhood. You'll hand them out to kids until June. Every kid, every day. When Carbone's men come, you hand them a lollipop and tell them Verone already paid. If they break so much as a toothpick in here, I'll bill them for the glass." The man's mouth fell open. "I can't." "You can," Luigi said, not unkindly. "And you will." The man swallowed and nodded so hard something in him looked close to breaking and then building itself better. Outside, Claire walked 2 steps without speech. "That wasn't charity." "No," he said. "It was a receipt." "For what?" "For belonging. I can't fix the city. I can refuse to let it forget who it is." They reached the corner where traffic made impatient noises. Claire touched his arm. He looked down, surprised at the gesture, then released his breath like he'd been holding it since the deli. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For buying lollipops and not my silence." He smiled then, the kind that rewrites the day. "I'd like to buy your time." "For what?" she teased, lighter now. "To make you dinner at my place at an hour when only cooks and criminals are awake." "Which one are you?" "Depends who you ask." It was nearly midnight when he carried groceries into his penthouse and kicked the door shut with a man's carelessness that had nothing to do with care. He hung his jacket on a chair instead of a hook and rolled up his sleeves again, and the act felt like a confession. "Stay out of my way," he said, pulling knives from a drawer. "I turn into a tyrant around onions." "You already are a tyrant," she said, amused, toeing off her shoes. "True, but I never raise my voice to garlic." He made her a bowl of something that tasted like secrets, told only to people who had proved they wouldn't turn them into weapons. She ate perched on a stool while he leaned on the counter and told her stories about the old neighborhood. The summer hydrants opened like small fountains. The women who could feed a block from 2 pots and a prayer. The boys who grew up to be enemies because no one taught them a better way to be important. At 2 a.m., the city outside pressed its face against the glass. He stood beside her at the window, not touching. Their reflections looked like strangers holding their breath. "I hate that I like you," she said, very quiet. I expected to pay a higher price, he said. She turned to him. He was too close. She tried not to step toward him and failed. He didn't move until she did, and then he met her halfway like mercy does when it has finally found a mouth. The kiss wasn't polite. It wasn't rushed. It was the kind that says, I will not treat you like a battlefield, and I will not treat you like a museum, and I will not let the world tell me our language is an offense. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Tell me to stop, he said, breath ragged. Not tonight, she whispered. They didn't go further. Not because they couldn't, but because it felt like they were building something out of beam and brick instead of paper and sparks. He walked her to the guest room and paused in the doorway. Door stays open, he murmured, as if offering her the oldest respect there is. It stays open, she said. He left her with a glass of water and the skyline and a blanket heavy enough to convince the body to put down its weapons. She lay awake and listened to the city mend itself in the small, dark hours. Sometime near 4, her phone, returned to her by Marco with a salute, buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. You're writing a story that doesn't belong to you. I write the endings. M. Her stomach iced. She stood and crossed the hall. Light still burned beneath Luigi's door. She knocked once. He answered immediately, hair rumpled, tie abandoned. She handed him the phone. He read. His eyes went very still. Matteo, he said. Is that his signature? She asked. His vanity, Luigi said. What do we do? We refuse to let a coward ghostwrite us. He reached for her hand, and she let him. It surprised her less than it should have. A soft chime sounded through the penthouse, the discreet doorbell of a life that keeps nighttime company. Marco walked in from the secondary entrance like a man who thinks sleep is for people less employed by fate. Boss, he said, jaw tight. He set a small evidence bag on the counter. Inside lay a single wooden match, head scorched, and a scrap of receipt paper charred along one edge. Claire's breath snagged. What is that? Marco's voice was flat. A reminder. From whom? From the man who wants you to spend the rest of your life apologizing for being seen, Marco said. It was taped to the downstairs door. Timed camera loop, 30 seconds of blindness. Luigi stared at the scorched match until the glass in the windows felt thinner. He looked up at Claire. Tomorrow we go to the source, he said. We pull every public record on your uncle's store, permits, complaints, insurance claims, fire marshal notes. We follow the ledger until it says a name out loud. And if the ledger doesn't say it, she asked, then we make the city say it. He answered. Outside, a siren wrote a red line down the avenue. Somewhere in the dark, a man smiled and believed in inevitability. Claire stood barefoot on cold tile, a mafia boss's fingers warm around hers, a city watching, a priest's warning echoing. Truth is not a weapon you get to use only when it spares you. The scorched match seemed to glow in its plastic tomb. If this was the beginning of something, it was one with walls thick enough to take a hit and windows wide enough to let the world witness the next one. Who had slipped through 30 seconds of blindness to leave a match at a door 30 floors below the city's conscience, and how many seconds did Claire and Luigi have before those 30 turned into 0? The scorched match in the evidence bag sat on the counter like a small, patient threat. Morning made it look harmless. Morning was a liar. Claire drank coffee she couldn't taste and watched Luigi move around the kitchen with the quiet purpose of men who have survived too many dawns. He'd rolled his sleeves again. She was learning that he did that when he meant to work, fight, or love. She tried not to think about which one came first today. We start with paper, he said. Paper forgets less than people. Fire reports, she answered. Permits, complaints, insurance logs, anything that has to be spelled. Marco has a clerk at City Records who owes him 12 pastries and a favor. We'll bring both. He slid her his spare leather jacket without asking. It swallowed her shoulders and smelled like cedar and rain. She zipped it and hated the way safety could feel like surrender and salvation at once. In the elevator, she felt the air change, that hush cities make when they decide to witness rather than interfere. He stood close, not touching. When the doors opened to the garage, his hand came down, firm at her waist, guiding her back a step so he could go first. "Rule 1, he said. "I enter, I scan, I take the first hit." "And Rule 2? She asked, because she couldn't help the stubborn spark in her. "Rule 2, he murmured, eyes sweeping the shadows. "You let me." Possessive, controlled. It should have rankled. It melted something she'd granted over years. They rode in silence to a block where the courthouse looked like a sermon in stone. Inside city records, dust dared them to complain. A clerk with a bun and a gaze that could reject gods met them at the counter. Marco set a white box of pastries on the ledge like a peace offering. She slid it toward herself without smiling and pulled a paper form from a stack. "Fill this out," she said, and then grudging. "Back room only. 5 minutes, quietly." They didn't get 5 minutes. They got 73. Claire lost track of time under the fluorescent lights of the records room, drowned in file folders the color of forgotten moons. Luigi moved like a predator forced to be gentle in a library, controlled, precise, patient. Marco read numbers the way soldiers read maps. They built a trail out of paper scraps. Fire Marshal Report, 21-4-117. Origin unknown. Accelerant suspected. Complaint, 3-11-19. Extortion attempt logged 6 months prior by anonymous owner. Insurance claim flagged, paid fast, too fast. Pushed through by an adjuster who, 3 months later, bought a new car outright. Marco tapped a line item with the blunt tip of a pencil. "Here." Claire leaned in. Ledger entries from a non-profit shell, Riverside Youth Initiative, wired donations to 3 small businesses on the block in the year before the fire. 2 refused the money. Her uncle accepted $5,000 for a community paint day. The shell listed a treasurer's name she didn't recognize. Luigi's jaw worked. "Riverside isn't ours." "Matteo?" she whispered. "Maybe." He traced the names with a fingertip, slower now. "Or someone who wants to look like him, or me." Marco's phone hummed. He scanned, then lifted a brow. Adjuster, the one who paid the claim, made a campaign donation the next year. To a city councilman who used to share cigars with Carbone behind the Belmont Club. "Names and patterns," Claire said, hearing Father Rinaldi's voice as if he'd followed them into the dust. They copied everything they could legally copy. The clerk pretended not to see, then waved them away with a sigh that said she was choosing the right sin. Outside, the air sharpened. City light turned stainless, winter catching on corners. Claire tugged Luigi's jacket tighter and tried not to count the eyes she imagined on them. "Lunch," Marco said. "Your sister's orders. She says starving doesn't make you righteous." "Since when do I obey Sophia?" Luigi muttered, then added, "We'll eat." They didn't. The world ate first. A woman in a navy suit swung out from behind a concrete pillar as if she'd been cut from its shadow. Adia Addison Cole looked like a verdict. Cameras were not far behind. You could hear their breath more than see them. "Mr. Verone," she said. "Ms. Ross." What a civic-minded pair. Luigi's hand found Claire's hip. Firm pressure, no panic, a claim made without cruelty. "You're following a teacher into a public building?" he asked. Bold optics. "I follow crime scenes," Cole said. "The ones that haven't happened yet." "Then you're early," Luigi said. Cole's eyes slid to Claire. "We could talk somewhere you're not acting. Just us. I bring coffee. You bring truth." Claire held the ADA's stare. "Truth doesn't like coffee. Truth likes safety," Cole said softly. "He won't give you that." Luigi didn't rise. He didn't snap. He lowered his voice until the air leaned in. "Don't use her because you can't corner me. Come for me directly. I'll give you a time." Cole's smile cut. "I'll come for what helps me win." She handed Claire a card. "When he fails you, call." "Is there a world where you're wrong about him, Miss Cole?" Claire asked. Cole's jaw ticked. "Not one I get paid to visit." She turned and walked back toward her car. No cameras. Just the threat of them. The badge was the lens. Claire didn't realize she was shaking until Luigi's palm pressed lower at her hip, reassuring and territorial. "You okay?" he murmured. "She makes me want to argue in a courtroom," Claire said. He smiled without humor. She does that to people. They ate in a corner of a quiet trattoria that pretended fame didn't exist. He ordered like a man who had once had to beg kitchens to feed him after closing. She watched him the way anthropologists watch tribes they admire and fear. "Tell me something true that costs you," she said when the plates were cleared. He sat back. The sunlight caught the scar along his knuckle. White, neat, old. "I fund scholarships. I keep my name off them. It doesn't absolve. It doesn't undo. It feels like pouring water on a field I helped dry." "How many?" she asked, surprised by the ache that rushed her chest. "A dozen. 2 dozen. It changes," he said. "Sometimes it's books. Sometimes it's rent. Sometimes it's shoes that won't ruin their feet." "And me?" she asked. "What am I to you? Charity? Penitence?" His eyes lifted and something hungry and careful burned there. "You're not mercy. You're not penance. You're gravity." The word rolled through her like heat. She felt it land low, where wanting becomes decision. He paid in cash, left a tip that would embarrass anyone else, and walked her through the afternoon like a bodyguard hired by the heart. When a cyclist took a corner too sharp and nearly clipped her, he grabbed her waist and pulled her back against him. Fast, firm. She felt his breath in her hair and something like prayer move under his ribs. "You're mine to protect," he said before he could edit the claim. She should have corrected him. She didn't. "Then do it right," she said, breathless and braver than she'd been yesterday. They reached the safe apartment above the florist at golden hour. The light made glass look like a forgiving lake. Inside, Marco killed the alarm and began his ritual of checking locks like a pianist warming up. Left, right, middle, repeat. Claire moved toward the window. Her reflection met hers. A woman who had gotten used to being nobody's first choice, standing with a man who terrified the city and handed her safety like a vow. He came up behind her, close enough that she could feel the heat from him, not touching yet. "If you tell me to keep 3 feet between us, I will," he said quietly. She turned. The distance vanished itself. 3 feet feels like a lie," she said. He cupped her jaw, thumb along her cheekbone, slow enough that she could stop it. She didn't. He kissed her the way a man kisses when he's memorizing. Pressure, pause, breath, deeper. She met him line for line. His other hand found her hip, anchored her there, a firm circle of possession that didn't bruise. She arched into him and felt his restraint like a storm bound by a leash he refused to cut. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against her mouth. Words hot, control absolute. "Not tonight," she said again, and felt him smile into her. He backed her to the wall, not hard, not soft. Exactly the pressure that says, "I'm here, I'm not leaving. I know where you end and I begin." His mouth left hers to find her throat, reverent and claiming. She breathed his name like a surrender, and he answered it with care. When he finally stepped back, it was because his phone vibrated with that particular insistence Marco used when he hated to interrupt. Luigi pressed his forehead to hers 1 beat more, choice, not apology, before he answered. "Santori." Marco's voice was too even. "Bring her into the hall. Now, don't touch the car." Luigi's eyes cut to Claire. Every muscle went still. "What did you find?" "A gift glued under her wheel well," Marco said. "Timer is asleep. Trigger is a kiss sensor. Arm when door opens. We've got 60 minutes until someone decides to wake it up with a call." Claire's skin went cold. "Is it likely?" Marco said. "Yes. Big? No. Ugly? Yes." Luigi's body rearranged. Man, then weapon, then man again. He took Claire's hand, firm, and guided her toward the hallway fast, steady. "In the corridor, back against the wall," he told her, voice low and lethal. "Hands where I can see them. Do not touch your pockets. Breath slow. Look at me." She did. His pupils were wide. His control was wider. They waited. 30 seconds. A minute. On the intercom, Marco's voice came wrapped in cotton and calculation. "I've got a tech on the line. Homemade. Not Carbone's A-team. This is a vanity bomb. I can disarm without waking it." "Can I help?" Luigi asked. "You can stand still and consider the ways you're going to make him regret his hobbies," Marco said. "Give me 5. 5 minutes filled with the sound of air. Claire's heart tried to break out of her chest. Luigi stepped in until his body became a wall she could lean on. He bracketed her head with his forearms, creating a human room only they fit inside. "I've got you," he said, quiet, absolute. She nodded because words would shake. He bent, kissed her forehead, possessive, protective, and her eyes went wet without her permission. "Boss," came Marco at last. "Done. It's a hollowed GPS puck with an amateur's dream inside. The dream is over." Claire exhaled all at once. Her knees softened. Luigi felt it and took her weight like he'd meant to all along. His hand came to the back of her neck, warm, strong. "You're safe," he said. "Am I?" She forced a laugh that wasn't amused. "He put a bomb under my car because I had dinner with you." "He put a bomb under your car because he can't get to me," Luigi said. "He's going to learn a new thing." "What's that?" "That I'm harder to hurt when I'm holding something I refuse to lose." Her stomach flipped the way it does on bridges. "Am I something?" "Not something," he said. His thumb stroked once at the hinge of her jaw, a line that felt like a vow. "You're the line." Marco came up the hall holding a small clear container with the dead device inside. He showed it like a museum exhibit. "Baby teeth," he said, "but he'll grow them if we let him." "We won't," Luigi said. Marco flicked him a look. "Then we talk about your sister." "Sophia?" Claire asked, startled. She'd only seen Sophia in passing once, in a photo on Luigi's sideboard. Dark hair, tired eyes, a surgeon's hands and a saint's posture. "She called me," Marco said. "Someone tried to lure her out of the hospital with a fake emergency consult. She smelled it and refused. Smart. But her name is in the air now." Luigi's jaw tightened. "She goes nowhere without security." "She threw my men out last time," Marco said. "She's nicer than you until she isn't." "I'll handle it," Luigi said, and the way he said it made the hallway feel smaller. "We're not done," Marco added, nodding at the jar. "Your ADA made herself visible at records. She'll find out about this in an hour and claim you staged it." "Let her," Luigi said. "She can stand beside Carbone and explain the match at my door." Claire scrubbed at her face. "I hate this." "You hate being a pawn," Marco said. "Good. Pawns survive by moving with purpose." "Has he always talked like an instruction manual for war?" she asked Luigi, a thread of humor hooking through fear because she needed it. "Since he learned words?" Luigi said, and Marco didn't deny it. The question that had been building in Claire since the records room pushed past her teeth. "If we prove Carbone did this, if we prove he did the fire, what then? You hand him to Cole? You go to court? Or you go to the docks and do what your family has always done?" Luigi didn't flinch. "What do you want me to do?" "Not what's easy," she said. "What's right?" He closed his eyes for a beat. When he opened them, the decision had weight. "Marco will compile a chain. Ledgers, phone logs, the adjuster's sudden prosperity, the false nonprofit. We take it to Cole before Carbone can burn it." Marco lifted a brow. "We're trusting the ADA who wants your head for her wall? We're trusting the city to recognize a monstrous lie when we draw it with enough ink," Luigi said. He looked at Claire. "We're trusting her." Claire swallowed. "Then we do it, before he escalates." As if the city had overheard and wanted to send a counterpoint, Claire's phone pinged with a number she didn't know and didn't like. She showed it to Luigi. "Unknown, no caller ID. Answer on speaker," he said. "Say nothing first." She did. Static breathed. Then a voice, silk over gravel. "Ms. Ross, you've made yourself very decorative on the evening news. Teachers should be careful about extracurriculars." "Matteo," Luigi said, calm, deadly. "Say hello to a man who doesn't fear you." A chuckle. "Luigi, I wondered how long until you started using women as shields." "Come upstairs," Luigi said. "We'll see what I use." "Tempting," Matteo replied. "But no, I prefer you fat with hope. It makes the fall athletic." "What do you want?" Claire asked, because fear had finally hardened into anger. "I want you to stop pretending you're the heroine," Matteo said. "This is a city of men. Stories end the way I say. The line clicked dead. Marco pocketed Claire's phone, jaw iron. He'll try something public next. He wants a crowd. Then we control the stage, Luigi said. He turned to Claire. Pack what you need. You don't sleep in your apartment again until I say. Not because I like cages, because I like mornings with you in them. She breathed in, out. The fear hadn't left. It had shape now. Okay, she said. But tomorrow we bring Cole the ledger. We force her to look. We will, he promised. She went to the guest room to throw clothes into a small bag. Luigi watched her go, watched the line of her spine, the set of her shoulders. He felt about her the way tectonic plates feel about continents, inevitability and awe. Marco's voice pulled him back. You're really going to hand the ADA the knife? I'm going to put the knife in her hand and point it at the right throat, Luigi said. And if she turns it? Marco asked. Then I've learned something about her, Luigi answered. And I stop pretending the law will do my work for me. He moved to the window. Below, the florist closed its metal gate. A breeze flipped a corner of the awning like a wink. Across the street, a boy on a skateboard caught air for the sheer favor of it. His phone buzzed one more time. Sophia. He picked up on the first vibration. Where are you? He asked. At the hospital, she said. I'm fine. I won't be smart if you send men with guns to hover. Send them in suits. They can pretend to be donors. He smiled despite the coil in his chest. Done. Luigi, she said, gentling, be careful with your heart. I'm better with it now. Are you? Sophia asked. Or are you just finally brave enough to admit you have one? She ended the call before he could promise something he might not be allowed to keep. Claire returned with the bag. He took it from her and slung it over his shoulder because he wanted the simple, old-fashioned intimacy of carrying her weight. At the door, she touched his chest, once over the place that had learned to forget it was a heart. You'll keep your word? About the ledger? About Cole? I will, he said. And you'll keep your hands on me like that when the walls start to shake? She asked, a blush in her voice that would have knocked lesser men to their knees. He leaned in, mouth at her ear, claim wrapped in velvet. I'll keep my hands on you even when the city tries to take them. Possessive, controlled. It was exactly what she'd chosen. They stepped into the hall. A city exhaled, preparing for its next scene. Somewhere, a man replayed a failed bomb and wrote a new note to himself about scale. Somewhere else, a priest lit another candle like a map. On the street, a delivery truck rolled past with the radio too loud, a love song arguing with sirens. The day looked almost normal. And then Claire's phone buzzed with a message that shouldn't have known her number. Tomorrow. Noon. Pier 41. Bring the teacher if you want the doctor to finish her shift. Luigi froze mid-step. The world tilted a fraction. Doctor? Claire asked. Sophia, he said, voice low. He just wrote her into the script. Marco's mouth flattened. He wants the waterfront. Of course he does, Luigi said. He wants witnesses. Claire looked at both men and felt the line they were about to cross hum under her feet. Then we make the witnesses ours. She slid her hand into Luigi's. He closed around it like a promise. What do you owe the truth when the city you love prefers spectacle? And what would it cost to walk into the light and drag a monster out by his name? Morning wasn't gentle. New York woke with teeth, and Pier 41 already waited like a threat on the horizon. Luigi stared at the message glowing on his phone. Tomorrow. Noon. Pier 41. Bring the teacher if you want the doctor breathing. Sophia, his only family left. Matteo had crossed a line that men like Luigi never forgave. Claire stood beside him in the safe apartment, still wearing last night's borrowed jacket. She didn't ask what the message meant. She already knew. He wants you scared, she said. He wants an audience, Luigi replied. And he'll get one. Just not the one he's planning. Marco spread documents across the table. Fire reports, permits, bank wires. A trail that pointed to Matteo Carbone, not Luigi's family, as the one who burned Claire's uncle's store. Claire highlighted names with fast, angry strokes. Luigi watched her, this woman who had decided she belonged in a fight no one invited her to, and felt something shift in his chest. "We take this to Ada Cole," Claire said. "Today." Luigi nodded. "You shouldn't have to lose your job over lies." She looked up. Sophia shouldn't have to lose her life. He liked that she always put others first. He hated that it might get her hurt. Marco handed Claire a tiny earpiece. "I'll hear everything. If anything feels wrong, you say Raven. Luigi will get to you before you finish the word." Luigi slid a small black disc into her hand. "Keep this close." His fingers brushed her skin, warm, controlled, protective. "I won't let him touch you." Her heartbeat answered before her voice did. The prosecutor scanned each page like she was grading the universe. "If this holds up," she said, "Carbone goes down, hard." "And Sophia?" Luigi asked. "I'll put surveillance on the pier, quiet, but if you show up, do not play hero." Luigi's voice dropped lower. "Heroes bleed for applause. I bleed for family." Claire stepped forward. "Tomorrow we force him to confess, out loud." Cole hesitated, then nodded once. "You'll have eyes everywhere." It wasn't a promise of safety, but it was power. They exited and the elevator doors slid shut behind them. Luigi's phone buzzed again. An emergency signal only Sophia could send, but the message wasn't from her. "Bring the teacher. Bring the proof. Noon." Claire read it over his arm. "He wants both of us." "He thinks you're leverage," Luigi said. "He's wrong. You're the knife." Her breath caught, but she didn't look away. Neither slept. They sharpened truth into a weapon. The room glowed with candlelight from Father Rinaldi's blessing hours earlier. "May you stand where fear says sit." Claire wore determination like armor. Luigi wore fear like fuel. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "When this ends, I'm taking you somewhere quiet. You'll complain about my coffee. I'll pretend to be offended." She smiled. "You really think we'll have mornings?" "I plan on it," he said. Violently. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Slow, deep, claiming. He kissed her back with a promise wrapped in hunger and restraint. "Stay alive," she whispered against his mouth. "Only if you stay near," he whispered back. Wind pulled at Claire's hair. Gulls circled like punctuation marks waiting for a sentence. Ada Cole's watchers blended into the crowds, a couple with a stroller, a fisherman humming, a vendor who never finished a hot dog. Luigi walked with Claire at his side, one hand on her lower back, guiding, mind to protect in every step. Matteo appeared at the center of the pier with two men behind him, smiling like crime was a personal hobby. "Where's Sophia?" Luigi demanded. "Where you'll never look," Matteo replied, "until I'm done with you." Claire stepped forward, brave, foolish, beautiful. "You talk big for someone hiding behind threats." Matteo's eyes sharpened. "You really are a teacher." He leaned in. "Want a truth? I lit the match that night. I watched the smoke rise over Queens. It was art." Claire felt Luigi's hand clamp protectively on her hip as sirens, real ones, began to creep closer from the harbor side. Cole's voice crackled across the pier. "Matteo Carbone, you are under arrest." Matteo grabbed Claire. In one breath she was against his chest and a gun was pressed to her ribs. "No!" Luigi's snarl tore the air. Claire's pulse pounded, but her voice was steady. "Let me go." Matteo chuckled. "No, I like leverage." He didn't expect Luigi to step closer. Fast, fearless, deadly. He didn't expect Claire to twist sharply, like she'd practiced this all her life. Her elbow drove into Matteo's ribs. The gun slipped. That was enough. Marco tackled Matteo. Cuffs clanged. Ada Cole advanced with officers flooding the pier. Claire stumbled, but Luigi caught her instantly, both arms around her, pulling her into him like she was the only person the world couldn't afford to lose. "You're safe," he breathed against her hair. "You came," she whispered. "I always will." She looked up. His eyes, dark, wild, relieved, held something she wasn't ready to name. He tilted her chin, thumb gentle. You're mine to protect. And you, she said, are mine to believe in. Marco hurried over, phone pressed to his ear. Sophia is safe. Coming now. Luigi closed his eyes, exhaling a prayer that wasn't aloud but existed anyway. Claire placed her palm over his heart. Tomorrow. Ask me. His gaze lowered to her lips. Ask you what? She smiled like the future. Whatever you're dying to ask. He leaned in, ready to take that kiss that had waited too long. A boom thundered behind them. Smoke erupted from a nearby building, City Councilman Hayes' office. Flames crawled the windows like someone trying to erase evidence. Claire jolted. He had a backup plan. Cole cursed under her breath. Luigi pulled Claire tighter. This isn't over, not yet. Claire looked at the fire, then back at the man whose shadow could burn cities. Then we make sure we write the final line. What happens when love becomes the only truth powerful enough to survive the fire? And how far will Luigi Veroni go, now that he has something to lose? The sirens clawed at the sky. Smoke unspooled from the councilman's office across the avenue, a black ribbon trying to strangle the ledger Claire and Luigi had placed in daylight. Ada Cole barked orders men snapped to obey. Marco was already on a call that would turn sprinklers, permits, phone pings, and campaign donors into a dragnet. Claire stood with her palm flat on Luigi's chest, feeling the hammer of a heart that had sprinted through a lifetime to get here. He covered her hand with his, eyes burning with relief and the new fear that follows it. We're not done, she said. No, he answered. We're seen. He turned to Cole. Hayes isn't smart enough to light that match alone. And Carbone's in cuffs, Cole replied, eyes on the fire. So who's mopping his mess? His money, Marco said, holstering his phone. His junior wolves, but the cameras are pointed where we need. Cole's plainclothes fanned out. Across the water, the ferry horn cut through smoke like a judge's gavel. Go, Cole told them without softening. Sophia's en route to the pier. ER team has her. I need your statements in an hour. Luigi's face shifted, war melting around a brother's worry. Claire nodded toward the access road. We'll be at the ambulance. They moved, together, fast, through curious tourists and a city that had decided it could finally stare openly. An EMT swung open the back doors. Sophia Veroni sat on the gurney, hair disheveled, cheek bruised, eyes clearer than anyone's had a right to be after a kidnapping. About time, she said, and then she saw Claire. You must be the reason my brother forgot to breathe. Claire laughed through the choke in her chest. I didn't mean to be. Don't apologize for oxygen. Sophia slid off the gurney and hugged Luigi hard enough to prove blood is a sacred inconvenience. You brought the city. You bit a man, Luigi said into her hair. I'm a surgeon, Sophia replied. I know where to make it count. They broke apart. Sophia took Claire's hands with quick, clinical tenderness, checking pupils and pulse and something deeper. You're steady, she said. Keep him that way. We will, Claire said and startled herself with the plural. Marco stepped up with news that smelled like victory and gasoline. Cole has Hayes' staffer in cuffs. The adjuster's bank account is frozen, and a warrant just kissed the nonprofit's fake books. Also, this is almost romantic. The priest sent a text. Light makes liars sweat. Sophia groaned. Rinaldi and his fortune cookies. His fortune cookies saved our lives, Luigi said. Good, Sophia said. Then make sure the bill goes to Carbone. Cole arrived with purpose like weather in heels. Your turn, Veroni, and Ms. Ross. I'll need your line exactly as he said it. Claire repeated the sentence that had ended a rumor 15 years long. I lit the match that day and watched the neighborhood learn the Veroni name wasn't the only one carved into the sidewalks. The words felt like a door opening and someone finally stepping into the right room. Cole's pen stopped. We'll charge Hayes for destruction of evidence, Carbone for arson, extortion, racketeering, conspiracy. If they try to wriggle, we tighten. She looked between the three of them. I'm not promising sainthood for your family, but I am promising the right sinners get named. And after? Claire asked. When the city gets bored and clicks away? Cole's expression shifted a half degree, almost gentleness. After I go back to being the villain in his friends' dinner parties. And you, she nodded at Claire, go back to teaching people the difference between truth and story. And him? Claire tipped her head toward Luigi. Cole's gaze flicked to the river. He can decide whether to be a headline or a human. Then, don't make me regret today. You won't, Luigi said. You chose the right fire. Cole left with her small army. Sirens receded. Smoke thinned to a scraped line. Sophia squeezed Luigi's forearm. Go, she said to Claire. Walk him somewhere normal before he turns this into a strategy meeting. Boss, Marco warned. Phone up again. Carbone's lawyer is already on TV. Loves kids. Hates fire. You can't answer him with shadows. We won't, Luigi said. He looked at Claire. Come with me. Where? She asked. Somewhere that feeds people real, he said. They walked a dozen blocks into a neighborhood that had memories for rent. A neon sign blinked diner in the window, like an oath that never learned to spell better. Claire slid into a booth that had been broken in by arguments and proposals and pie. A waitress with a pen behind her ear poured coffee like forgiveness. This, Claire said, is our cathedral. It's where tomorrow waits when the city shouts too loud, Luigi said. They didn't speak for a moment. They let the bell over the door and the sizzle from the kitchen and the clatter of a teenage dishwasher knit the world back together. Tell me the worst version of today in your head, Claire said at last. That I wanted to wrap you in iron and hide you, Luigi said. That I would have burned the pier to keep you breathing. That I almost let fear write me like Carbone does. What stopped you? She asked. You, he said simply. And the way you walked into a sentence and asked for I. She smiled at the memory that had cut handcuffs around a man's tongue. He couldn't resist himself. You didn't resist yourself, Luigi said softer. You were the bravest person on that pier. She lowered her eyes to the coffee, then back to him. I was terrified. Courage doesn't ask fear to leave, he said. It sits with it and speaks anyway. The waitress set down pie, apple for her, lemon meringue for him. Claire laughed. You ordered for me. I asked the kitchen what they'd make for a woman who saved a city from a habit, he said. What did the kitchen say? Apple, warm, a scoop. She took a bite. The cinnamon hit like childhood, the warmth like something she hadn't realized she'd missed. He watched her, then reached into his jacket and set a small box on the table. No flourish, no speech. Just an object heavy with intention in a room that had seen both better and worse. Luigi, she said, breath catching. He didn't open it. He placed his palm over it instead. I built a life out of controlling doors and windows. I know how to make rooms safe. I don't know how to make mornings, but I want to learn with you. In this country, in this city, in a home where my name stops making other names afraid. Her eyes stung. He kept going. I'll sell what I have to sell. I'll turn Verone into something the phone book doesn't whisper about. Security, logistics, community grants that don't need my name. I will testify if Cole asks. I will stand where fear says sit. I will put my hands on you like a vow and take them off like a gentleman when you ask. He exhaled. Marry me, Claire. Not because I'm cleaned. Because I'm cleaning. Because I chose you in a world that hates choosing anything soft. She could have asked for time. She could have said not yet. She didn't want a better answer than the one already rising in her throat. Yes, she said. It came out like relief and thunder. He opened the box. The ring wasn't loud. It was simple, classic, a circle that understood geometry and eternity in equal measure. He slipped it on her finger, hands steady for a man whose life had finally started moving. The diner bell jangled. Someone in a corner cheered without context. The dishwasher banged a pan like a cymbal. Claire laughed, crying now, not sorry. Luigi kissed her knuckles as if the bones there had been waiting their whole lives for his mouth. Say it again, he asked. Yes, she said, grinning. Yes. And if you make bad coffee, I'll still say yes. I'll learn, he promised. You already are, she said. They sat in the booth and let the pie cool and the future warm. Outside, sirens thinned to threads and stitched the afternoon closed. By evening, the city had learned new names for old crimes. Hayes was perp-walked under a sky that looked too clean for the news below it. Carbone, cuffed and calculating, left the precinct to a chorus of shouted questions and a single voice that yelled, "Tell the teacher you're sorry." He didn't. Ada Cole stepped to the microphones only once. "We charge the men responsible for the Queen's fire and related extortions," she said. "We will not outsource our courage to rumor." She didn't say Veroni. She didn't need to. The restraint was the point. Father Rinaldi lit a candle for souls newly scraped clean and smiled when no one could see. Marco found numbers that made a prosecutor's teeth ache and a judge's pen comfortable. He texted Sophia, "Get your brother measured for a tux." She replied with a photo of her middle finger and a heart. In the safe apartment, Luigi drafted documents with a lawyer who knew where bodies weren't buried, divestitures, dissolutions, the kind of paperwork that starts and ends empires without a shot. Claire watched him sign with a hand that didn't shake, then took his pen and wrote her own name under the part about the foundation. Books, rent, shoes that won't ruin their feet. No fanfare, just a ledger that would finally buy mercy at retail. They lay awake at the window afterward, shoulder to shoulder, a city reflecting on their faces like a baptism. He traced the line of her ring with the back of his knuckle. "Do you remember me now?" she asked, smiling against the glass. "I remember you always," he said. "But if you're asking about a stairwell and a winter night and a 17-year-old who didn't know what to do with one clean instinct..." He turned, his mouth brushing the corner of hers. "Yes, I remember that boy because you made a man out of him today." She kissed him, slow, certain. He answered without rush, without fear, with all the promise they had just signed. "Kindness isn't charity," she murmured, echoing a ghost. "It's one human looking out for another," he finished. "Sometimes it's everything." She laughed into his mouth. "Stealing my lines already." "They're ours now," he said. Down on the street, a florist dragged a metal gate closed. Across the boulevard, a deli handed a lollipop to a kid who didn't ask for one but pocketed it like treasure. Somewhere, a woman switched off a television and decided to sleep a little closer to hope. Luigi pulled Claire into his side until her head fit beneath his chin like a solved problem. He breathed in soap and smoke and the first quiet he'd earned. Tomorrow would bring court dates and arguments and the dull paperwork of making a different life. Carbone would howl from his cage. Hayes would barter. Cole would not blink. Sophia would insist on a ceremony with bad cake and good wine. Marco would grumble through a best man speech that made everyone cry. Tonight belonged to a woman who had refused invisibility and a man who finally understood that love is the one risk that pays in full. The city blinked, slower now. The river kept its silver promises. The ring on Claire's finger caught a sliver of light and threw it back at the room like a dare. "What do you call a future you didn't know you could ask for, when it answers yes twice?" If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.